People deluded. I'm back again. People have been crying for Tom to get Tom back on the show. I finally delivered. It's early morning business. Happy new month to you, my dude, and congrats on 60K. How you doing, my Brent?
Yeah, good man. Thank you very much. Although I will say that this setup makes my head look even bigger than it actually is in
This
real
guy,
life.
man.
So I know I've got a big head, but this makes it look huge.
You just drew attention to it, man. But how do I kick this off? We've got a lot to discuss, man. It's been a while, man. You know what I want to do is gauge how you feel about the climate around the club in September, because many people, or not necessarily Arsenal fans, said, you know, with the injuries, with not everyone being happy off the back of the transfer window, September could make or break us. Now, I don't know about you, but I think we've done all right, regardless of how the season pans out.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like, I think that in the broader context, you look at how we started this. You look at the start of the campaign that we had, the first 5 games, incredibly tough challenge, you know, and to think that we come out of those 5 games unbeaten, winning 3 of them. I know I'd rather have picked up at least 4 wins, but when you think about obviously where we are now after 6 games, being level on points with Manchester City, having played far harder teams than them, like, it is a really good start to the season. So fans have a great need to be, I think, excited about where we are.
What do you make of, I have to ask, man, obviously it's been a while, but the Manchester City scenes after the game, man, all the players throwing their toys out the pram, are they rattled, as some would say?
100%. Like, it's not just the players. Man City as a club are utterly and entirely rattled by Arsenal. We are living rent-free in their heads without a shadow of a doubt. And that was evident in some of the post-match quotes that you saw from the likes of Bernardo Silva. It was evident, I think, even from some of the magnanimous quotes from like Carl Walker, who tried to kind of calm it down a little bit, because clearly some of the players felt as though that maybe it was getting a little bit away from them. And you saw it just from Haaland throwing the ball into Gabriel's back of his head, the physicality at the final whistle, the be humble comments being made. Like Haaland, like, you think about the great strikers of the day, and you think about Thierry Henry, for instance. And I'm often asked the question, I remember I was on TalkSport recently and I asked about the difference between like Thierry Henry and Erling Haaland, who's the better Premier League striker? And I said, well, in terms of just like the core assets of a striker, Haaland, his goal scoring is unbelievable. But as a player, like Thierry Henry, I just think is unrivaled. And you'd never see Thierry Henry doing something like that. It just wouldn't happen. And that's the difference between the two.
I think you're bang on the money, man, especially your comments around Haaland. Like, Haaland's a great player, generational striker, arguably the best out-and-out number 9 in the modern day. Now, but that was the first time he looked his age. He looked like someone that's 20-odd years of age, or in his early 20s, better yet. Now, obviously, when we've played Manchester City, there has been some scenes. I remember our set-piece coach got into it, Mikel Arteta and Kevin De Bruyne. But why do you think, like, for them, it's come to a head now? Like, it feels like the cup is overthrown. Is it a case of, you know, they just see us as challengers? Because normally they used to beat us up on a football pitch, kind of pat us on the head and say we're doing so well. Now we can't get any praise.
Arsenal are always hated, man. Like, this is
in history.
George Graham, as he said it, you know, and as that clip's been going around on socials this last, you know, week or so, it's fashionable to hate Arsenal. It's fashionable to batter Arsenal. And, you know, we, as a fan base overall, we have to take some responsibility. You know, we have a very reactive fan base, a very provocative fan base.
Yep.
We've got, you know, the Arsenal, you know, if AFTV obviously started the whole kind of like football fandom online type thing, and it's obviously blown up into this massive thing. So Arsenal have always been, you know, a very provocative fan base, and so I think that comes with the territory in some ways. But on the club side of things, like how like Graham Souness and Roy Keane started speaking about how Arsenal showed inferiority at City was the most laughable load of rubbish. Like,
absolute BS, mate. Like, you're being far too kind. Absolute BS.
Like, same as Bernardo Silva, like saying, "Oh, well, Arsenal don't play like Liverpool." Like, you know, we're down to 10 men. That the toughest place to go in the world, arguably.
I think that's a compliment to them.
Would you want this? Like, you look and you saw what happened to Man United. I know that they didn't have a lead, of course, when they went down to 10 men, which is important context. But they took off what Kobe Manu for Mason Mount in that moment. Had they been more reserved, they may have been able to hit them on the counter. You think about the game against Brighton, where we went down to 10 men. We conceded because of a defensive error. They split us open very well, and Saliba and Gabriel were caught a bit napping with Joao Pedro eventually getting that goal. But the way in which we approached everything after that point, we created 2 huge chances through Havertz and through Saka that we should have scored and should have won that game still, even with 10 men. So if Man United had been more pragmatic in how they'd approached it like we did the Brighton game, they would have created chances and not have surrendered a huge defeat at home in such an embarrassing manner.
I found it weird, man, because only we get mocked for, putting in the defensive display. As you said, we went down to 10 men. I actually think we was courageous. We scored in the 90th minute. Again, we're the only team that can get mocked for celebrating a late equalizer. I don't know if you saw it, but yesterday some comments surfaced about John Stones. He referred to it as the winning goal. So I actually think we're doing all right, if I'm honest with you. As I said, I think the biggest sentiment we could give City is that we actually did that. We've obviously got some great individuals, but we can't necessarily go toe-to-toe with you at your game. So why would we do that? And also, I'm not being funny, but in the last 4 games, it's worked for Mikel Arteta. So why would you change something just to please the fans? When we were more on attacking centric side, they called us naive. Now we're street smart. They've got issues. What do you make of us being labelled a defensive team as well while we're here?
I mean, we can be a defensive team. We've got an excellent group of defensive players. Like if you've got Saliba and White and Timber and Gabriel, Calafiori, Rice and Partey in front of them as well. Of course, you've got amazing ability to defend exceptionally well. It is probably our biggest, benefit is the defensive qualities of this team. So when you get into a game state where you need to lean on that, of course you're going to. And if you're a team that doesn't necessarily, you think for instance, if Chelsea got into that scenario, they're defensively very questionable, but they've got some very potent attacking players, particularly, of course, Cole Palmer. So different clubs, depending on the resource that you have, are going to adapt and change the different game states that you're facing. So for Arsenal, more inclined to lean on their defensive securities, whereas a team like Chelsea would be more inclined to lean on, going for it. And Liverpool, in the same sense as well, would be more inclined to lean on their attacking resources as well. So yes, you can call us a defensive team. You're not really breaking ground with that assessment. Arsenal have much more defensive quality than any other team, arguably, in the league. So they're going to lean on that, and other teams are going to lean on their strengths.
And we were told defense wins titles, and I'd like to think our defense is doing well and can get better. I definitely think we can do better in the middle and final third, considering I don't think we've got into the full swing of things and kind of hit our optimum. I just see it as great, really, because I think when you're looking to win a league title, at our best, we can take on anyone. But it's about when things kind of go wrong or you're not necessarily at your best or spanners are thrown in the works, I'm happy with it. And what I've liked now is obviously referees have had a big bearing on the game, but a lot of the time referees have done us dirty and we've just managed to salvage something. So you won't find any complaints from me, really and truly. What I did want to ask you as well, man, how do you feel going into October about Arsenal? Because we have to speak about PSG.
Yeah, I've got another international break coming up as well, which is just painful as well. That's getting through PSG and then Southampton, and then you've got that 2-week gap, which is again just so it wouldn't be as unnecessary if we hadn't have just had one, in September. That was really that was one of the worst international breaks I think I've ever gone through. Just
they need to get rid of it.
Without question, like they need to restructure it. Like you have to have abilities for smaller nations to qualify for competitions. That's important, but you need to restructure it so that there's less games and still this opportunity for those nations to get their chance. And having 3 breaks in 3 months is another one in November. Like that needs to be it needs to be changed. But yeah, I'm feeling good about going into these 2 games. PSG, of course, have got some issues on squad wise. We don't know who's going to be ready to start. Is Donnarumma going to be ready to start? Is Asensio going to be ready to start? Is Nuno Mendes going to be ready to start? Because there's question marks about them. Ousmane Dembele's not there because of a post-match issue with Luis Enrique after the Rennes game. And then, of course, you've got other players like Gonçalo Ramos, who is out. Prisnel Kimpembe is out as well. And there's
a lot of injuries, man.
As well as out has skipped my mind, but they have got some players coming back like Vitinha. Lucas Hernandez is the other one that's out as well. So another big player, that they're missing. But you've still got, as I mentioned, Vitinha coming back. You've still got João Neves, who looks a really impressive young player they signed this summer, of course, as well. They're still going to have Barcola, who's been fantastic this season as well. So they've had a really good start to the season. They have dropped points. They drew against Reims away from home, who are one of the top 6 sides at the moment in France. They very narrowly beat Girona in the first game of their Champions League. They relied on a last-minute own goal to get 3 points against them at home. So I think Arsenal have got a really good chance to against a potent, threatening side, but one that they will be expecting to beat.
What are you expecting from the game from a tactical point of view? Because as you said, they've got players missing, but they do have great players in form. Luis Enrique is a household name. It's him against Arteta, kind of 2 Spanish managers of the same ethos. I don't know about you, but I'm a lot more confident in Arsenal away from home in the Premier League than at the Emirates. I think there's a lot of drama and we're kind of entertaining for the neutrals. Away from home, we're boring. We just handle business. And I think I flipped that in the Champions League in the sense that I'd rather play anyone at home. I think we can do them. Away from home's a bit of a different one. Now, obviously, we got a point against Atalanta. I don't think it's the worst of points. I definitely feel we could have done better. But what are you feeling about PSG?
Yeah, I think, and it's not just because we're playing against a team that's another 3-letter acronym starting with P, but I think that we could play this game similar to how we approached the PSV game, which is a team comes to the Emirates with attacking talent, missing some of their key defensive players like Lucas Hernandez and Kimpembe, and looks to lean on their strengths, as we were talking about a second ago, and lean on their attacking threat. And Arsenal use that to their advantage and hit them on the counter and cause quite a lot of damage. I think Arsenal still will be expected to dominate most of the ball, considering they're at home. I think it would be flipped if this was, of course, playing in the Parc des Princes. But being at the Emirates, there's going to be an emphasis on Arsenal being the attacking side, and I think you're going to see that tonight. And I think if they get an early goal, it could open floodgates in this type of game, because PSG, you know, you've seen the number of high-scoring Champions League games PSG have been embroiled in the past, but we don't want to underestimate them at the same time. They have got a lot of quality, and if Arsenal, you know, are a bit erratic, or if they're asleep like they were at the start of the second half against Leicester, very quickly things can unravel. So
go south.
It's a frenetic opportunity to see both teams play. I think it will be billed as one of the more exciting games of this first league phase of the new competition. So I'm looking forward to it. But I think Arsenal should be expected to win this one and to win well still, I think.
What kind of game are you expecting in the sense of just from PSG? Because when you normally think of PSG, obviously they're not there, but you think of Mbappe, Neymar, Messi, etc. Now, for me, it looks like they've obviously got quality players that can make the difference. You listed a bunch of them, but does it make you more confident or less confident because they actually appear kind of a well-rounded team, rather than just superstars with massive egos?
Yeah, since the exit of Mbappe, I did a preview show for the game last night on the channel, and there was actually a PSG fan in the chat, and he said that we're a better team without Mbappe, because they feel like the cohesiveness, the group culture, the family culture of that team has improved since they've lost that figure who took all of the limelight in some ways. I don't think that happened at Real Madrid in the same way, because there's so many big superstars there. It's hard for one to break above the other, with Bellingham and Vinny Jr. and now Mbappe, etc. And, others in the group as well. Whereas at PSG, now it's like, well, yes, Dembele's had a fantastic start to the season and will be missed, but Barcola is there. You've got João Neves in the midfield. Vitinha's been fantastic for them as well. Fabian Ruiz had a really good Euros with Spain. So they've got loads of really good talent that has meshed together, I think, a lot better since Mbappe's left the club. And so I think that will mean that they are going to be more of a threat. And I think that maybe one of the biggest mistakes that the ownership of PSG made was this desperation to hold on to Neymar and to Mbappe, and to kind of focus all their attention on investing in a talismanic figure to get all the attention. When actually, over the last 10 years, had they built the team in more of a cohesive, well-rounded way, they may have won a Champions League by now. And they still would have they still could have signed big stars. But when it's such an emphasis on such a one-dimensional figure like an Mbappe, I think that takes away from things. And it ultimately ended up costing them, I think, a Champions League title these last decade.
I'm sure you've been asked this, Tom, on your YouTube channel. Do we have to win today? Now, mathematically is another thing, but 2 points, 2 games and a point potentially, it doesn't necessarily look good. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so mathematically, no, but I think in the context of the league phase, yes, I think we do. I think you're looking at the home games. I was talking to someone yesterday on a preview, a good friend of the show, Damien, was saying that they've looked at kind of metrics. You need about 15 to 16 points to get into the top 8 in this league phase. So if Arsenal were to say draw against PSG, that's 2 points within a remaining 18 available. So suddenly that's looking, you have to pick up 16 in 6 games. So that's to
beat Monaco and Shakhtar, etc.
14 in 6 games. It's going to prove, you're going to have to beat those teams. Sporting is a really difficult opponent away from home, as we know. So like we've got some tricky games. Girona had a good season last year. They're struggling a little bit this year. And Monaco, are no mugs. They've just beaten Barcelona. We've got to play them. So we've got some decent teams that we've got to play. And I think, this is definitely more of a must win.
What would you say is the goal for us in the Champions League? Obviously, we'd all love to win it.
I think realistically, I want to go, just keep progressing. So if we get to a semi-final, you can point to that and say, Arsenal have gone that one step further. But when you reach a semi-final, it's so gutting not to get to that final.
You're flirting with it, yeah.
Exactly. Like we've been in semis before, the Man United one, of course. Like you think about where we were and, get into finals as we have done in Europa League and the pain of losing to Chelsea in that, the pain of Paris in 2006 as well.
Oh, man.
The Champions League has something different. I still rank the Premier League as something that I want to win more because I just think as a club that it's a harder thing to win. Being the biggest club in your country is obviously a big thing, but the Champions League is something different for Arsenal because they've not won it. And I think for a lot of people, that's what creates the debate about what they'd rather win between the two, just because we haven't won it yet. Had we already won the Champions League, I don't think there's much debate about what people would rather win because it would be the Premier League. But because we haven't got that accolade, and a team like Chelsea, of course, who, his history is restricted to the last 20 years, we need to think about that and building back that kind of history for Arsenal as well.
Obviously, the Prem, in my opinion, is more attainable. But just because you said that, like, would you rather win the Prem or the Champs? For real, you'd rather win the Prem?
Yeah, I would rather win the Premier League. Yeah, I just think that with this Man City team, of where they have won the last 6 of the last 7, the progress, the strategy, everything that we've built to be Premier League champions again after more than 20 years, and since the invincible season, would be an amazing. Like, I can't express, like, if people get on Arteta's back, and I get it because we've not delivered a trophy since 2020, and we've spent a lot of money comparatively to Man City. We've not spent as much in the same time since Guardiola came in, but the achievement for Arsenal under Arteta in his first job to win the Premier League would be an unimaginable achievement. Like, we think of it as almost like I think some people take it for granted who say that if he doesn't win the Premier League, this year or next year, we have to start asking questions. I need people to kind of drum it into their minds how big of an achievement it is for Arsenal under Arteta to actually win it in this context of the league. It would be an unreal achievement to
only been managing for 2 minutes basically as well.
Exactly. It would be incredible. So yeah, the Premier League for me would be an amazing thing to win.
I'm with you with that. I don't think you've told any lies there. For me, I'd rather win the Champs just because, as you said, we haven't done it. Europe as a whole, I feel, for Arsenal fans, young and old, is just filled with a bit of drama and L's, really and truly. And I don't want to remind Arsenal fans, but, for as much as we're a bigger team than Spurs, both of us have been to the same amount of finals, and I just don't think that's on. We've kind of been flirting with speaking about it. What did you make of the Leicester game? Because for me, I feel had we all scored 4 goals like we should have in the first half, and then we let 2 in, I'd still be a bit critical of the defensive errors, but we'd look at it differently. But it was crazy, really and truly, for me, man. I'm happy we won, but I can't put it into words, really. It was just crazy, man. But where are you at with it?
The Premier League is unpredictable, and you can never underestimate anyone. So those scenarios can crop up, and they have done for us. They did already in the Brighton game to a degree too. So the fact that we came out of it with a win in the end was really important. And I think the difference between this game and, I think about the Man United game we were drawing 1-1 at home, and I think about the Bournemouth game when we were at 2-2 as well going into added time. This is the calmest I felt I've ever been going into added time, despite us not leading a game.
I can't say the same.
No. People experience games in different ways, and I was
sitting
in the ground. I was still having a bit of a laugh and a joke with with my colleague next to me, just because I just thought it was fine. I just felt as though we were going to score. I just felt as though that the pressure would eventually tell. Like, it wasn't a case of we were being frustrated by a Man City in the final moments when you need a goal. It was just shot after shot after shot, and I was like, eventually the pressure is going to bulk for Leicester, and we're going to score, and we're going to get a little lucky deflection as Man City did against us, and then we got it this week. And I think that I just have this sense of inevitability about Arsenal at the moment, and that's a really good feeling to have.
And that's what I like. I feel we're nowhere near being, Premier League winners and stuff because we haven't got over the line, but we've shown we can react to going down to 10 men. We can defend for our lives. And that goes for the whole defensive ethos of the team, let alone the defenders. We can find goals. I hear comments around we need wingers and strikers, and I don't disagree, but isolated to what we've got at the club, everybody pulls their weight. Like, I'm sure you would agree. In the early days of the Emirates, we only had an Alexis Sanchez or just one player that might produce a moment of magic. Now everybody wants to do that. And we've seen, I don't want to say unlikely heroes from set pieces because we're open book in that regards, from set pieces, Big Gabriel's there, but everybody pulls their weight, from the young Ethan who's come on and been very brave to obviously the usual suspects. What do you make of Calafiori and Timber? Because I saw Mikel Arteta's comments around having natural footers on the left and right. I'm sure you've had the conversations. Many Arsenal fans are saying, you know what, Benjamin White, count your days kind of thing. What do you make of them two? And what do you think is the first choice fullback pairing?
I think the first choice would still be Ben White and Timber at the moment if everybody was fit, because Timber and Ben White I think have been the most consistent players for us so far. But I do really like Calafiori on the left. I think it's unlocked a little bit more of
Quality
Martinelli.
player, man.
I love his chaotic nature. That will be refined, of course, under Arteta. You know it will.
Facts.
But I do think that his progression of the ball into midfield, the way in which he's so confident in possession, and he doesn't really make too many offensive errors. Like defensively, there's been a couple of moments, but offensively, he's very shrewd in what he does. And of course, the goal he scored against City has already enamored him to, every Arsenal fan already. So that's helped a lot with him. But I still think that Ben White offers such security and consistency for us on the right-hand side. Timber just offers a different technical level that I think we've not had in a fullback for a while also being very defensively secure.
Facts.
So he's got like the best balance of everything. And I think that, the idea of like the whole rhetoric of Ben White needs to be careful completely misjudges the idea of a title team. Because
we said we need squad depth.
Exactly. This is the whole point. Like, just because somebody comes in and starts doesn't mean you have to start packing the bags of the player that was initially starting there. It's about having options. It's about rotating. It's about finding the right keys to the right holes of the puzzle that you need to unlock in different oppositions. And if you get a new key in, but you get rid of the old one, suddenly you've lost that ability to unlock a different door. So I think that it's really important that Arsenal fans in general look at squad as a unit rather than an 11. And or as a best 11 or as a formation on a team sheet, because it is so much bigger than that. And if we've got, you look at Man City, they've got Gvardiol, Ake, Diaz, Stones, Lewis, Walker. They've got players that can play some games and rotate them for others and that are going to be beneficial in some games, but not others. So, yeah, I don't buy into the whole, Ben White is going to pack his bags because Timber's looking so good. We need both of them.
I'm with you with that, man. I think it's just a case of different horses for different courses. I just feel, when Calafiori's come in and he's made an impact and he looks like he's been here for years. Obviously, as you said, Timber's technically sweet. You add in the tigerish nature and he's a bit more all-rounded. Ben White probably hasn't been grabbing as many headlines, so it's easy to look at that. But I'm not being funny. We talk about squad depth, as you said, and it's actually being tested all around the squad. Defensively, it's being tested. We know Benjamin White for years has been playing with injuries. We know he's nursing something now. We know Calafiori's actually been touch and go at times. And we know, as great as Timber is, I kind of rate what he's doing more because he's still coming back from an ACL injury and had a disruptive preseason. So I'm cool with the depth. I would love Tomiyasu to be fit and be thrown into the mix. I know many people are not fond of Zinchenko, but just to have him as a body. Of course, technically, you've got Kivior and Kieran Tierney. Whether they're main players in what Mikel Arteta is doing is another thing, which is amazing. You kind of touched on it. How do you feel about the left-hand side with Calafiori and Martinelli? And is it too early to say Martinelli's turned his fortunes around?
I think that I saw a weight lifted off his shoulders when he scored.
Yeah, the scenes are crazy.
It was like you could see it in the stadium, like when he scored. And I think the best example of it was that he had a chance just before he scored that he put over the bar. And then he had the exact same chance minutes, like 10 minutes later, and he smashed it into the keeper's gloves. But he gets it on target. And just those two opportunities, either side of a goal, show you kind of what confidence can do. And it can change the way in which you kind of take your shots and believe in yourself to hit the target at least. So, yes, I think that in such a short space of time in football, things can change dramatically for a player's mindset. And I think that happened with Martinelli. I think Calafiori's definitely helped with that. And kind of his progression on that side, having a natural left footer there is definitely important. Timber and Martinelli doesn't necessarily mesh together as well. But I also really like Sterling coming off the bench as well. I thought he offered a lot when he came.
Going to get onto him. Take it away, man.
So I think the depth that we've got, we're just talking about the depth at right back and in the fullback areas, but also that left-hand side, you've got Martinelli, you've got Trossard, you've got Sterling that can all play there. So it's exciting. And I think that, it's a good place to be where, you've got games coming up, especially in the Christmas period, where we're going to have to rotate players in and out. And having that level of depth is going to be key.
Who do you think is the first choice left winger? Because you could say Martinelli. Ultimately, he's the one that plays. I don't think Sterling will be happy on the bench. Obviously, if it's not broke, don't fix it. You do have Trossard who can play there. Obviously, he has to play in midfield at the moment. And then you've probably got someone like Gabriel Jesus, which I want to ask you about in a minute. But do you feel it's open season on that left-hand side?
Well, it's interesting because I think again there's comparisons to Man City. You know, Pep Guardiola just came off the back of starting both Doku and Savinho against Arsenal, and then a week later against Newcastle he starts Grealish and Bernardo Silva in
That's
the wide
true.
areas. So, and in some ways he ended up kind of paying a price because obviously they drew that game, even though they brought both of those players on in the second half. I think it was to try and go for the win, but rotating and sticking with your guns. Arteta's had great success in sticking with his kind of preferred 11 in many ways. You think about the end of last season where we went on that run of losing just one game in all of 2024. And I mean, we still only lost one league game in 2024. And
Which is crazy.
Which is mad. Like we're in October now and Arsenal have lost one league game all year.
We need to get to the end of the year, man. I need to go into 2025 unbeaten. I need that stat if I'm honest with you, Tom,
well,
man.
one defeat, but yeah, season, of course, yeah, unbeaten. That'd be great, but yeah, like it's so weird to think about kind of like who the established players are and like who's the starting figure is, because it is Martinelli at the moment, and I was talking about this on the channel. Like Martinelli's broken the mold somewhat under Arteta because Saka was always going to be like a future figure for Arsenal. Saliba as well was always, I think, going to be destined.
Facts.
Even though there was a lot of question marks about him under Arteta at the start, but there was always, from knowing a few contacts at the club, they never had any doubts about Saliba.
Just timing.
They exactly. They just wanted to time his introduction at the right possible moment, and they got it absolutely spot on. Martinelli was always the one where there was always a few question marks about him because of inconsistency, because of injury, more importantly, and delivering, of course, also the introduction of Trossard to that left-hand side as well, and having a more experienced Premier League figure there. But as with like Xhaka, who's moved on, Tierney, who's been replaced, thinking about Aubameyang, Lacazette, these Ozil, of course, too, all players that were established starters when Arteta arrived. Martinelli was a figure. Yeah, exactly. It's loads. Like you can continue to go back through all the names and players that have left since then, but Martinelli is one of the few that has broken that mold and stuck in the team and stuck as one of Arteta's key figures, despite not being one of his signings. And that's hard to do, and it's been proven to be hard to do. So clearly Arteta has given him 2 contracts since he arrived. It clearly believes in the guy. Clearly believes that he has got the talent to be a left winger for him. And even though he's brought in players like Trossard, they haven't been young guns. They're not like, up and coming players like he did with Jesus and did with Havertz and has done with Rice and, players that have come in at a younger age. He signed older players. Yes, they were looking at Mudryk as a potential player, but it didn't work out, and I'm quite glad that didn't work out.
You're not alone, man.
But Martinelli, I think, has proven to be a much superior player and continues to do so.
What do you make of Gabriel Jesus? Because many people, including myself to a degree, I love Gabriel Jesus. I said if he doesn't get 15 goals, I'll delete my YouTube channel, which I'm going to have to lie and say I didn't do. I'm going to have to lie. I don't know if he'll get 15 in all comps. And then I look at Tomiyasu. I love Tomiyasu. As we said earlier, we'd love to have him in the mix. But do you feel it's one where they kind of have to lay down a marker this season? They kind of have to stay fit, and we kind of can't have the same talking points we might have now come May about them, or maybe something has to change.
Yeah, I'm not sure because, as I say, there's obviously always going to be conversations that need to be had about certain players, certain individuals. But with Jesus, he's such a liked figure by Arteta. And I was always told that he came back this summer with a real tenacity about his training and he looked a different figure. And then he got that injury at the start of the season. Again, second season in a row. And Havertz has obviously established himself at centre forward. Jesus also had a really good record at centre forward in the Champions League, and that benefit maybe is going to be something that we lean on to if he starts tonight. I think it'd be a surprise, but you never know.
Big surprise.
So, with Jesus, I think it could be his last season, and Arsenal haven't, of course, engaged in any kind of renewal of his contract, and to the best of my knowledge, and you think he'll have 2 seasons left at the end of this season, and that's usually a bit of a cut-off point, usually for an indicator, players. So and I think a striker is again another player that's on the market for Arsenal. I think a striker will be something that we target in the summer of 2025. So I think his days are numbered, but he still is a valuable part of this team.
And Tomiyasu?
Yeah, Tomiyasu. Again, I think he'll go in the summer, and I think they're kind of just. You look at the contract extension he had; it was a 1-year extension, It wasn't the same contract that Ben White signed that was like a 2-3 year
Exactly.
extension on his deal. And that tells you kind of what they feel in some ways about his reliability. I think when Tomiyasu's fully fit, he's a quality player. And I really like him. And I think he is underrated.
Facts.
And his versatility is so valuable. But you just can't rely on him to stay fit. And that's the biggest. And every time he comes back, I remember speaking to him in the mix zone after a game. He was saying about how he felt good. He felt different. He felt, like it was different this time. I remember speaking to him in a pre-Champions League press conference, having just come back from injury. And he said like he felt like he was back. He felt like he was ready. And then he was injured again, like in weeks later. And I was just like,
man.
It's not his fault. Like, I feel for the guy, but that's something out of his control and something that Arsenal can control by making a tough choice in terms of squad building with him in the future.
Did Kivior stay and take you by surprise? I mean, clearly it's a good choice because he's a body, but yeah, he was someone that was seen as could leave him.
Yeah, and only because of his side more so, not anything malicious like he wanted to force a move, but just because he wants to play and he's not playing at the moment. I think he's played like only against Man City this season and Bolton, of course, in the League Cup. But I like Kivior as well, similar to Tomiyasu. I think he's more than a decent player. I think he's been well worth the signing of 20 million quid to bring depth.
Grown in confidence as well, to be fair.
He has, and it's really difficult when you come in, you don't really speak the language. He's improved his English since arriving here. But yeah, he came into a team, like at that point, he came from Italy. We didn't tend to really sign players, from Italy. So it's not like he's coming in, there's a lot of Italian speakers. Jorginho's here, but he's signed at the same time as Jorginho. So it's not like he was joining with somebody else that had been there for years.
That was already meshed in.
Calafiori's then come in, but he's a player who speaks Italian. No, is there for his position. So that's also another blockade for him. I think it was important that we kept him.
I think you're bang on, man. Zinchenko then. Because he's someone that I think a lot of us, including myself, kind of forget about with the fullback talk. Now, I like him. I think there's certain games for you. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I know he was injured for the City game, but to go into City and Aston Villa a few weeks ago, to have the Timbers, the Calafioris, Benjamin White, this is what I prayed for, if I'm honest with you.
The thing is, we're coming up with all these names like Zinchenko, Kivior, Tomiyasu, but then we also think that Partey and Jorginho's contracts are at the end of this season.
I was going to get into those.
Jesus we're talking about. And I was looking at last summer and I was thinking last summer in 24 was like the last overhaul that I wanted. I wanted like the windows going forward to be like little incremental additions. I wanted to see like 2 players coming into the starting 11 and then maybe some younger players being looked at.
Level raisers.
If you're losing Jorginho and you're losing Partey and Zinchenko and Kivior and Tomiyasu and Jesus, and obviously Sterling's only on loan as well, and Nelson I think will go as well.
That's a lot of names.
That's a lot of players.
That's actually a lot of names, yeah.
And so all of a sudden, we want to sign 100 million plus centre forwards. A lot of us want to see that happen. We want to see midfielders come in next summer to strengthen. They're going to have to be younger players because Jorginho and Partey are going, and Moreno's we've signed is not like a young player either. So, and Lewis Skelly and Nwaneri will definitely fill those holes. But beyond those two, there's not. Aiden Heaven's exciting, but I don't see him at the moment being someone I think that will make it. Others that have made their debut, like Nichols and Kakuri, who I like, but again, I'm not sure I see them at the moment as having Arsenal futures. I could be proven wrong. I hope that I am. And so then you're leaning on the transfer market. And so that's a lot. And Zinchenko is a player that, he offers something. He's a decent player, but he's got his limitations. He's got his mistakes. And so I think because of that, you're always going to have some question marks.
Do you think Jorginho or Thomas Partey could earn new deals? Because I think Partey's form has been good. Obviously, the wages is another thing. And I do quite like if Jorginho was going to join the coaching staff, you've seen as well the City game where he's basically a coach in the game. Where are you at with the 2 veterans in midfield? I
think if either of them are going to get a new deal, it probably would be Jorginho.
Probably, yeah.
Partey, I think, is just, I'm seeing, his age come through a bit now. I'm seeing the tiredness of his legs. The injuries that he's have had, I think, are taking their toll. And so I think it's the right time at the end of the season to just take the next step in the midfield, to move on from Partey and to move on. The people will say that we have to let both go. We can't rely on Jorginho, but the reality is, and it's a blunt reality people need to understand, is that the expectation that Arsenal can go out and sign 2 midfielders that are going to improve on both for Jorginho and Partey, while also wanting a centre forward, while also need to bring in a winger because Sterling's going to be only on loan, you're suddenly getting into FIFA and Football Manager career mode levels of transfer desires. So that's the reality. It's not a computer game. Like, you have to be measured and realistic about what business you can do. And it's not a case of like, we've got a billionaire owner. There's profit and sustainability. Like, we've done really, really well to keep that within check this summer.
We had a positive net spend as well.
Basically, yeah, we're net positive, effectively, at least net zero for this summer. So there is freedom to spend next summer. But as soon as you go and spend 84 million quid on Gyökeres, for instance, that's like half your budget gone.
Yeah,
and you still need a midfielder, and you still need another midfielder, and a winger, and a defender, and maybe a backup goalkeeper because Neto's only on loan. So, like, it's like, what, we can't just keep spending and spending and spending, and then expect also the team to be perfectly meshed and gelled ahead of another title challenge. You look at Man City's business year on year on year; they only add 2 or 3 genuine level raisers.
It's that, yeah.
Add a few depth options. And that's it, year on year on year. That's what they do.
Well, what do you make of Moreno's return? Because, you know, we kind of spoke earlier about potentially Calafiori and Martinelli and that relationship. Obviously, you'd imagine Merino plays on the left-hand side and Declan Rice plays on the right. I don't know if you think there'll be 2 8s or, you know, Rice will move back into the 6. But what do you think of his return?
I think it's exciting. And I'm going to write about this later, but I'm going to talk about like how set pieces are even more scary with Mikel Merino.
He does love a header.
The goal he scored, of course, for Spain in the quarterfinals of the Euros. He is so good in the air. Like, FBref shows he wins 5.98 aerial duels per game, which means he's in the 99th percentile for midfielders for aerial duels won. And he loves to get in the box. He loves to have touches in the box. He loves to get forwards. He ranks in the 97th percentile for non-penalty goals. He ranks in the 95th percentile for attacking touches in the penalty area. Like, he's exciting. And people said, oh, he's a box-to-box midfielder. It's not a replacement for Smith Rowe. It is a replacement for Smith Rowe because he has got such good attacking threat and he is going to bring something different. And as Arteta spoke about in his press conference yesterday, it's also his intelligence and ball knowledge and game knowledge and desire and tenacity and motivation.
Can't wait to see him now, man.
It's such an underrated signing. Like, and I'm so gutted that
he's not a sexy name.
Yeah, I know. It's called Mikel, and people are Mikel out. You know, so yeah, it's difficult. But you know, I spoke to Theo Walcott recently about this, and I asked him about like what's it like for a player when they miss pre-season, and he did say like you're always playing catch up. Like you never get.
Look at Rice the other day. Well, up until recently,
he's like you never get to the same level as the players that have had a pre-season. It just doesn't happen. You can get to a level that's really good, but you're always playing catch up. So I think we'll see really good performances from Mikel Merino this season, but I think he needs a full pre-season when we don't have a summer tournament next year. And then next season, we might see, like, you think about Granit Xhaka's best year, the season before last, like that we might then see in terms of Mikel. But I really was gutted when Xhaka left because I wanted to see Xhaka, Rice and Ødegaard together. I think we'll see that with Merino.
We miss Xhaka at times, man.
We do. And I think Merino adds a lot of what we lost when he left.
I think you're bang on the money. What other player was I going to ask you about? Lewis Kelly and Ethan Nwaneri. Now, both of them have played in the last top 6 games. For me, Lewis Kelly has put himself in Arsenal history. He's been booked without coming on the field. He's already got an enemy in Haaland. Why Haaland would pick a fight with him speaks a lot of Haaland. What have you made of those 2 young players? Because they haven't been given too many opportunities, but they've done well. I think both did very well against Bolton, man.
Yeah, I think that I think actually that Nwaneri did way more in the 10 minutes we saw him against Leicester to convince Arteta that he's ready than the entire game against Bolton. Because like obviously the opposition is something, and that's one thing. But in a moment where your team needs an impact, your team needs a spark.
That's so much courage, man.
In a moment of adversity and pressure to come on, take on 3 players and bang a shot close to the left-hand corner that could have gone in if it wasn't for the most evil man in England, Hermansen, that day. You know, like, it was incredible. It would have been amazing to see that go in. And it's such a shame he spoiled it. He was a brilliant game, and he's a really good goalkeeper from a shot-stopping perspective. I think he's got limitations as a ball-playing goalkeeper. But when it came to that moment, I was like, he's got it. He's got the thing. He's got that thing that I saw in
Got the
Picasso
X factor.
many years ago. He's got that spark, that confidence, that the head on shoulders that are far older than his years. Like, and
He's made for this.
He is, and I think that, you know, people are desperate to see him start games. I'm much more of a fan of the Phil Foden reintegration of gradual exposure, because you want to protect them, you want to give them the time. I think that he's got a great shout to start against Southampton at the weekend.
To be fair, you're right.
I think he can come off the bench this tonight, and we'll see what he can do as well. But yeah, it's exciting. And he's got a great mentor in Ødegaard as well. Like, you couldn't ask for a better mentor of a player than Ødegaard to have that for that position. And those two, I think, can eventually maybe even play together, you know, as in front of Declan Rice. It's something that we could see.
What do you make of Declan Rice in the 8 role? Do you think he'll keep playing as an 8 or move back to a 6?
The days are numbered for me.
I've
always said that he's the 6. I've always wanted him to be our Rodri. Like, that's what I've always wanted. And he's done really well in the 8. And he's come on leaps and bounds in that position. But I just think with the signing of Mikel Merino in particular, that dynamic of having Merino, Rice, and Ødegaard, you know, as with Merino playing the 8 and Rice in the 6, I just miss, like, if you think about the start of last season when Rice did play the 6 because Partey was out, and we had Havertz and we had Ødegaard in midfield. Havertz was, of course, still getting to grips with things and still improving. The position was limiting to a degree, but I think it was more his mental side that was limiting Havertz in midfield. And I think actually we've seen some decent midfield performances since then from Havertz. But Rice won so many Player of the Match awards playing DM for us.
Yeah.
Consistently being our Player of the Match because of his energy, the way in which he broke up the offensive opportunities for the opposition, the way in which he could like stretch into challenges, his reading of the game. Yes, he's improved. Yes, he doesn't have maybe the line-breaking passes of Partey, but he drives with the ball really well, and he can help us suffocate oppositions with the way in which he can kind of be that. As Hugh Izzy used to say, use the words "walk football." You know, the way in which kind of the ball would just kind of go around the box. Like, it's such a perfect analogy, and I think Rice would be really good at that. So I like him in the 6, and I think that's where his future lies.
Do you think he's too safe on the ball?
Sometimes, yeah. That will be a coaching thing too. It's not just about him. And sometimes you want safe because
Fact.
If you give the
That's
ball
also
away
true.
at this level, you know, it can be dangerous. And when you've got players like Ødegaard and Waneri and soon to be Merino who can pick a pass better, lean in your strengths. Play the simple pass. Play to the players that can do the really dangerous things and be our wall that we need you to be. Like, I don't need Declan Rice to be a line breaker. I don't need Declan Rice to be a risk taker. I need Declan Rice to be the guy that I can depend upon to do all the things that he does really well. And
do that dirty work for us, man.
So that's what you need.
I think you're bang on the money, man. I do think Rice has given a great job at playing in the 8. I do think people have exaggerated, but for me, I think, you know, his bread and butter is the 6, being the kind of guy that recycles possession to the more talented players in terms of breaking the lines. That's what got him bought to Arsenal for 100 million. As I said, Arteta knows more about football than me. If he thinks he can do that, great, do your thing. But I just want him to be that 6, or as you said, that kind of Rodri. And I just think he looks a lot more. In fact, I don't think it's fair to say, but for me, he looks a lot more comfortable in that 6 role. So I want to see him move back there. I think a lot of it has been because we've had inconsistencies with partners next to him. So we've just kind of had to find some sort of solution. But you never know, with Ethan potentially, you know, growing in stature, there could be some sort of flexibility. Somebody told me to ask you, do you feel when Arsenal win a trophy, the fan base will be united? Now, for me, I kind of disagree. I do think the fan base is a lot more united, but as we probably see making content, there's extreme opinions. It's like Arteta is the best thing since sliced bread, or he'll never do anything right until he wins the trophy, where the truth's probably in the middle.
I think if you're not on board now,
which I think is crazy,
you never will be. And if you're not on board at this point with what we're doing and where we're going and what we've shown and the continual improvement year on year on year and getting more and more and more goals, more and more points, getting closer and closer and closer to City, going further in the Champions League for the last 14 years. Like, yeah, if you need a trophy to then back it, that's not good enough.
Look at United.
Exactly. Like, I wouldn't have traded any of their seasons that they won a trophy under Ten Hag for any of ours. I wouldn't trade positions with them. I wouldn't trade anything because Arsenal are in a much better position to establish a consistent trophy haul over the next however many years.
And it's not papering over cracks.
Exactly. And Arteta's earned that new contract, but it does come with the proviso that in this next deal that he does deliver the league or does deliver the Champions League. I think he has to, because I think if he doesn't do it in the next few years, then we've seen that this is the ceiling. He's taken us to where he can take us to. Unless over those years that he still continues to progress and other things happen. We'll see. It's impossible to make a judgment now. We don't know what's going to happen in these next 3 years. Like, the idea that you need a trophy to convince you that you, or to kind of justify your backing of the team that you, in quotation marks, support, is not good enough. Like, you ask Arteta or the club to raise their standards. It's you that needs to raise your standards as a supporter, because that's not good enough. That's not good enough as a fan. Like, it's such a level of entitlement I just can never get on board with. Like, we're fans of the club. We back them. We can have our opinions. We can criticize. But when the team has done what it's done, I just don't get with the complaints. I just don't understand where they come from, to the point where you're questioning where we're going, because we've only moved in one direction.
I'm with you with that, man. I definitely feel, we've definitely hit some bumps along the road. I don't think Arteta or the players are free from criticism. However, I do think the pros undoubtedly outweigh the cons. And I'm not being funny. And for all of those, and I'm not saying Arteta I'll never ask for him to be sacked, or there can never be any question marks, but you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't say City is so good. They've got these charges. They've got, more money than we probably ever know about and what they're doing. And then you look at Arsenal and then you say they've really got no chance. So if we've got no chance of winning it, you can't really get onto him for that. And again, I'm not saying this to keep Arteta, but where is this manager going to come with that gets us over the line? If you could find that, great. But who is that? I don't feel there's undoubtedly someone that you can identify. Yeah, we could say all the household name managers, etc., but it doesn't make sense. It's a bit like, I just feel people see what they want to see, and in life you have to be humble and say you got it wrong. But I just think some people are too far to turn back. My last question before I let you get out of here, Tom. A lot of people say we can't sign a striker because we got Kai Havertz. Do you agree with that? And what do you make of Kai Havertz's future at the club if we did sign a number 9?
I think his versatility means that he'd be relatively safe. I think that he would get plenty of opportunities. His skill set is suited to certain game states that we'll need, and we need a goal. I love Kai Havertz. I think he's a fantastic player, and I think I'm really happy we signed him. And I think he's proven obviously a lot of people wrong, including
doing very good for himself.
He's done really, really well, and he's never going to be an Erling Haaland. Like, that's not who he is. But he's just such a great asset for the style of football that we play and the style of attacking.
He's a fighter as well, man.
And he's so he really wants it. Like, he's so motivated to succeed at Arsenal and to prove a lot of his doubters wrong as well. And if and when we do add a Gyökeres or a type of striker like that in the future, he's going to be an asset for the midfield. He's going to be an asset for the forward line. He's going to be an asset to play as a second striker. If we have injuries, to have that depth is going to be really important. And
prime age as well
for games. Yeah, and realistically, Havertz is a player that deserves to be playing Champions League football, deserves to be at a club like Arsenal. It might not be that he's always starting week in, week out when we add our dream centre forward that's meant to take us to the next level, but he is going to be valuable for this side and get plenty of minutes playing for this side. So yeah, it was a really astute signing that we made.
And I'm happy with Kai, man. I defo, if I go back to that summer, I think we signed Raya, Timber, and obviously Kai. I was behind the first two with Raya and Timber. I wasn't against Kai Havertz, but it was a thing where my faith is just in Arteta's like, okay, I trust you. You're a bit of a mad scientist. You can make things happen. We took a while to really get over the line with Kai Havertz. And in a positive way, he's a positive shadow of his former self. Like, respectfully to Kai, he's gone a long way from getting charity penalties against Bournemouth. He's scoring goals for fun, quote unquote. His performances are there. And if you told me when we signed him that he would be first choice ahead of Gabriel Jesus, I'd say maybe you're smoking something, if I'm honest with you. Gabriel Jesus gets nowhere near him. He gives us that height. He gives us that ability to win duels. And he's a shithouser, pardon my French. Like, we've got him, we've got Benjamin White. When I heard Mikel Arteta first say, Kai's a fighter, he'll go to war with you, I didn't doubt it, but I thought maybe that's one of those things the manager's just saying to G up his players. And then I saw it happen for him. He's gone from being a charity case at Arsenal to a protagonist. So keep going, Kai. And people can criticize the 65 million shout. Nobody cares when you're doing well. He's doing well. No one gives a flying monkeys about his injury. So, Kai, keep doing what you're doing, man. Tom, I'm going to let you get out of here, man, because I know you've had 2 big shows this morning, man. Let people know where they can find you. Congrats on the 60,000 again, my friend.
Thanks, man. Yeah, you can find us at the Gooner Talk every morning, 8 a.m. And looking forward to doing the PSG game tonight for Football London as well. So you can check us out over there for some minute-by-minute commentary too.
Make sure you go and follow Tom's socials, people. As I said, I'm going to let him and you get out of here. I'm pretty sure you lot agree and disagree with a lot of our content and comments that we've had. So join the conversation, like, comment, subscribe, follow both channels, and we'll see you lot again soon, man. Peace, Tom. Peace out, everyone, man. Peace. Always